An urgent and direct question arises, demanding the immediate attention of Leo XIV. This is not a simple dispute, but a powerful cry resonating among the faithful, families, priests, and theological experts worldwide. If the Holy See remains silent, the consequences could impact the very existence of the Church much more than one is willing to admit. But what is really happening? And why should this matter to every Catholic without exception? Pay attention until the end. You will discover why this moment is so crucial. The Church is going through a period of great tension, with signs that can no longer be ignored. Among the many issues still open, there is one that directly touches faith, prayer, and the very heart of Catholic worship, the traditional liturgy. It is precisely on this ground that one of the most delicate battles of the current pontificate is being fought today. No grand declarations or official recognitions are needed. The facts speak for themselves. Announcements of cancelled celebrations, expiring permissions, and liturgies being reduced or moved to secondary locations are multiplying. Everything happens silently, but not without consequences. The message being conveyed is clear. There's an attempt to reduce traditional liturgy to something fleeting, merely tolerated out of courtesy, rather than what it truly is, a vibrant and recognized expression of Catholic worship. What's most striking isn't just the continuity with certain recent trends, but the timing of it all. This is happening precisely when many, both in Rome and beyond, were expecting a change in atmosphere, an opening, a broader embrace. The faithful who love tradition aren't asking for special privileges, but they are asking clearly and firmly for one thing only. Great expectations are placed on Leo XIV, as many faithful look to him for guidance and hope in these challenging times for the Church. This is not merely a question of liturgical rules or preferences, but a profound matter that touches the very heart and identity of the Church. If this trend of distancing from tradition is not halted now, the consequences could be lasting and deeply damaging. The path back to our roots will only become more difficult, and the unity of the faithful may be at risk. What happened in Westphalia, within the Diocese of Jefferson City, holds a special significance. There were no scandalous announcements, no expulsions, no public clashes between priests and faithful. Simply, a permission was allowed to expire, and that was enough. For 7 years, the traditional Mass has been celebrated uninterruptedly in St. Joseph's Church, thanks to a special authorization granted by the bishop and confirmed by Rome, which allowed the use of the 1962 Missal in a parish, something required by the Traditionis Custodes regulations, which prohibits the celebration of the ancient rite in parish churches without explicit permission. However, at the end of June, this exception will come to an end. Consequently, the liturgical celebration will be suspended. The parish priest, Father Dylan Schrader, detailed the situation in a long, honest, and, in a way, painful letter. There will be no rebellion, no personal demonstrations. Only the sincerity of one who understands that to obey does not necessarily mean to agree, and who, out of conviction, cannot act otherwise. Schrader is neither a radical nor someone looking for controversy. He is a well-prepared priest who has been drawn to traditional liturgy since his seminary days, guided not by nostalgia, but by pastoral and theological conviction. With care, he has formed a vibrant community around the ancient rite, instructing altar servers, preparing liturgical materials, and welcoming entire families, always with a deep ecclesial sense. But now he finds himself in the difficult situation of informing his faithful that the liturgy can no longer be celebrated. Not because it was considered invalid, but because, lacking new authorization, it is no longer possible to continue. In this context, silence is equivalent to disapproval. The diocese remains without the guidance of a bishop. The previous pastor, Monsignor McKnight, has been reassigned to Kansas City. During this period of change, no one felt it urgent to act. Everything remained in limbo. And along with the liturgy, a tradition of faith dedication and harmony, is also broken. While in Westphalia, the traditional rite quietly disappears, in Charlotte, it was on the verge of being abruptly suppressed. From the beginning, the position was clear and firm: to centralize, standardize, and rapidly transform everything. Bishop Michael Martin, who took office only a year ago, immediately showed a very clear direction and remarkable energy. Perhaps too much. And while closure orders were being issued, a confidential document was circulating among the priests. A draft of local liturgical reform was presented that went well beyond what was established by Traditionis Custodes, contemplating the prohibition of kneeling to receive communion and the suppression of altar rails, as well as restrictions on the use of liturgical vestments and on the personal practices of priests. It was a true spiritual restructuring imposed by the hierarchy, almost like an Italian-style management manual. The response was immediate, not only from those linked to the traditional liturgy, but also from many ordinary faithful. Letters sent, demonstrations, public declarations. The discontent grew to a point almost no one had foreseen, leading the bishop to reconsider the situation. It was decided not to make radical changes for a year. Just a pause, not a definitive transformation. However, priests most identified with tradition were discreetly transferred. A precise intervention, carefully executed to uproot the conflict. Furthermore, it was discovered that Rome had personally reprimanded Bishop Martin through the current Pope Leo XIV, asking him to act with prudence. However, he ignored the warning, accelerating his actions and clashing with a community no longer willing to remain silent. Charlotte is not simply an anecdotal case. It is clear evidence of an episcopate that, in certain sectors, seems to prioritize loyalty to an ideology rather than the defense of its people's faith. When even those who do not frequent the traditional liturgy perceive that something is wrong, it is a sign that the situation is more serious than many admit. The mechanism is clear. It is not directly forbidden. It is simply allowed to disappear. Permissions are not renewed, requests are ignored, responses are postponed. In this way, the traditional liturgy dies out without needing to be named. No one explicitly forbids it, but the outcome is identical. Many communities are left without celebrations, without guidance, and without clear answers. This is not just a practical matter, but a profound ecclesial issue. This way of acting causes distrust among the faithful, especially among those who, despite having a deep love for the traditional liturgy, have never broken communion with the Church. On the contrary, they have remained within, showing patience and obedience. For this, the Holy Father, Leo XV, is called to intervene, not with vague words or halfway solutions, but with a firm decision. Now, the entire ecclesial community, priests, religious families, young people, turns its gaze to him, not out of complaint, but for the love of the Church. His pontificate has just begun, but on this matter there can be no more delay. Because if tradition is perceived as an obstacle, the challenge extends beyond the liturgical sphere. It transforms into a matter of trust between the shepherd and his flock. What do you think? If you liked this video, type Amen in the comments. God bless you.